Hi, I'm Malika Bilal in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, New Zealand's flag referendum. We tap into the debate about Kiwi national identity as the country decides whether or not to change its flag. So this is a story we've been watching for quite a while now, and digital producer Omar Badar knows that well. What are you seeing, Omar?
That's right, Malika. It was exactly almost 2 years ago when New Zealand's Prime Minister John Key first floated the idea of having the referendum. Back then, we covered how people in the country were reacting to the proposal and sharing some of their ideas for what the new flag could look like. And of course, you, our online community, kept our focus on the story. So back in November, when we asked what we should cover, Ryan reminded us about the flag change, saying that it was disregarding the rights of the indigenous Maori people. David agreed and followed up with us again earlier this month. We checked in with him about today's show to learn a little bit more about why he's pitching it.
My name is David Tuiplotu, and I had asked for the flag referendum to be featured on the stream today because I felt like it was an ample opportunity for us as a nation to collectively discuss the issues and implications with not only the process but also what will happen afterwards. I also felt like both sides of the referendum had taken to personally, and that we should be collectively discussing it as a nation from all angles.
Thank you, David, and I hope we'll be able to do that today. But first, Malika will give our international audience who may have not followed the story very closely a little bit more background about some of the angles that David was talking about.
Thanks, Omar. That's right. New Zealand's 3-week vote comes to a close later this week. And as Omar mentioned, this has been a long process from when the idea was first raised. Now, along the way, New Zealanders submitted more than 10,000 new flag design ideas. You see them behind me. That number was narrowed down to 5 last year, from which 1 was chosen to go up against the existing flag in the current vote. Well, the referendum has sparked a heated debate about New Zealand's national identity. Many want to do away with the existing flag because it features Great Britain's Union Jack, serving as a reminder of New Zealand's former status as a colonial outpost. Well, for them, a flag change is an opportunity for the country to recast itself as a modern, multicultural nation that's more connected with Asia and more inclusive of its indigenous Maori community. But many who feel strongly connected to the country's history, including war veterans who fought for the flag, oppose change. Others see the push for the new flag as a corporate marketing gimmick and a vanity project of Prime Minister Key. There's also been much criticism of the referendum process, which has been expensive and has left many unhappy with their options, even if they are open to change. So what will New Zealanders decide? Well, to help give us some insight into this, we're joined from Auckland by Lewis Holden, the campaign chairman of Change the New Zealand Flag. Hannah O'Regan is a member of New Zealand's Flag Consideration Panel and a director of Maori and Pacific Studies at Christchurch Polytechnic Institute of Technology. Alex Baird is a journalist with the TV and radio station News Hub. He's also in Christchurch. And in Wellington, we're joined by David Mauger, the CEO of the Returned and Services Association, an organization committed to the welfare of war veterans. Well, welcome to the stream, everyone. Lewis, I'll start with you. What does New Zealand's flag mean to you?
It means really that New Zealand was once a colony of Great Britain. It came from a time when we actually had the British Army in New Zealand essentially confiscating a lot of land off Maori. It's a symbol from that era, and it really says to the world that we're a British colony, and that's why it needs to change.
David, you heard what Lewis thinks. What about you? What does it mean to you? Do you agree?
Not at all. Our flag represents where we have come from as a nation and all those events that have created what we are as a nation in the world today, and what that we will continue to be as we grow. It's a flag that shows that we're more than just a flash in the pan, that we are a country that has a very proud heritage across a whole range of military, of scientific, of sporting achievements. And that's what represents us as a nation powerfully to the world today.
So, David, we have a challenge for that from people online. We have people like Ghadir over here who tweeted in saying, all that remains of the so-called then great empire should vanish, including picture of the Queen on the coins. And then you have Dav Andrew over here who says, it's about time New Zealand got its own identity. Why should the oppressive colonial past be celebrated and remembered? If you were talking to an indigenous person who found this colonial history, with the British tie, offensive, what would you actually say to them to convince them that that's not what's happening with the flag?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember actually is from my limited understanding, and it's our Kaumatua who has advised me on this, that the relationship that the Maori people have is actually with the crown. And so that's a heritage that we can be very proud of. And I think the issue is these days that the questions that were coming up there are more about our constitution rather than our flag. Now, if we want to have a constitutional debate, that's a separate issue. But there's no reason actually to change our flag as it stands without having that debate. So from that perspective, what we're seeing is no real drive for change from the vast majority of people that are talking to us, certainly.
Now, I want to show our audience just a little taste of what some of these flags look like. You saw a little bit at the top of the show, but more than 10,000 designs they had to choose from. And of course, many of these were user submitted. So I'm just going to scroll through some of these more than 10,000 you see here that were up for voting. That got narrowed down to 5. As we mentioned, here's the 5 designs. But Alex, there were several that were not picked. I want to show just a few of them, just tabbing through. This is from the Telegraph in the UK. This one is one of them. This is a deranged cat raking its garden. That didn't get picked for whatever reason. Here's another, Pacific's Triple Star. Tab through this one. This one is my favorite, I think. This is a kiwi bird, the national bird, a fern, and the bird is shooting lasers from its eyes. Alex, were you happy with what got picked? Of course, knowing what the alternatives were?
Yeah, no, not really, to be honest. And one of the reasons why I personally voted to keep the flag was because I wasn't overly happy with the alternative. And I know that a lot of people, especially young New Zealanders, I'm in my early mid-20s, and I know a lot of people feel the same way, that the alternatives just weren't up to par.
Hannah, do you want to weigh in there?
Well, of course, I've got to take some responsibility of that. I was on the flag consideration panel, so yeah, we picked the final ones. And I guess what I have to say is that, yeah, before I entered into this process, I had no idea that it was going to be so complicated, and there was so much to take into consideration when assessing the flags, and everything from design in terms of representation of the symbols, the way that flags are positioned. And the other driver, which was significant when we went out to the population and asked people what were the most important symbols that characterise New Zealand identity, overwhelmingly people identified some key symbols that they wanted to have in the flag. And the Southern Cross, the star constellation of the Southern Cross and the fern were the 2 top that came back. So I think, you know, whilst it's easy to look at the designs and say, you know, they're not what I would have picked. It was a very long and integrated process that got us to that position. So, yes, hindsight might, in 20, 50 years' time, people might say they weren't the best ones that could have been picked. But we went through a process, and I think that was one of the things that I was actually pleased about, was that it was a clearly defined process, and we did our best to uphold that.
Hannah, you mentioned symbols. You mentioned the Southern Cross, and you mentioned the fern. What do those mean to New Zealanders?
Well, I think overwhelmingly people said when they wanted when we were talking about what would a new flag potentially look like, people said they wanted it to be unique, that it was really important to have something that distinguished us from other places around the world. There was something about our place in the world, in this southernmost island in the Pacific. And I think one of the things that, in terms of those symbols, is that the silver fern is a readily identifiable symbol of New Zealand. Yes, you have ferns all over the world, but this is something that we've used traditionally as well to represent who we are as a people. We do it on the sports field, but we've done it in many other areas as well. It's a key Māori symbol. The unfurling fern is used throughout Māori art, and it was a characteristic of Māori art here in New Zealand. So I think for most people, the silver fern represented our place in the world. This is us, this Pacific nation here down in the south. And the Southern Cross, well, we share the Southern Cross. We're not completely claiming it as our own. Of course, many people in the Southern Hemisphere look upon it and have quite a connection to it as well. So but it's another locator beacon.
We do have people online who are actually also, looking at this particular symbol and what it means to them. We're getting a little bit of different reactions. We have R. Neil over here who says the current flag has a dignity befitting of a national flag. The proposed options are nothing more than corporate logos. And then we have James over here who says, I voted for the original flag. The new option contains a corporate symbol that is strongly associated with sports, and it would be like Australia putting a boomerang and a kangaroo on their flag. It is a joke. Lois, how do you reconcile these two things? That on the one hand, it's, a native symbol, and on the other hand, people are referring to it as a corporate symbol. What do you make of this?
Oh, look, these are the very similar arguments that were made back in the 60s when Canada changed its flag to the maple leaf, that it was a corporate logo, that it was just, a gimmick, etc. And they now have probably one of the most distinctive flags in the world. I think the issue that we've seen in this debate has actually been around the process that has been followed and the specifics of the design that have actually been put forward in the referendum. I think it's been very interesting that a lot of the time we're simply talking about things like how many leaves there are on the silver fern and issues like that, which really actually go to the design itself rather than the overall question of whether we change or not.
And I think that's one of the problems that has been encountered regularly throughout this whole referendum process, is that the flag options that are being put forward are not gelling with New Zealanders. And that seems to me to be the issue of why we're focusing in on the different elements of the design. We've had comment from various New Zealanders, high-profile ones, about it being a logo, looking like a tea towel. We've got the question around whether the actual fern is a fern, and people are talking about it as a fishbone and all this kind of stuff going on. Whereas our current flag, and I loved that comment earlier, brings a dignity and a position of strength for us as a nation. Whereas will people gel behind this new design when there has been so much controversy about the process that's gone through? It was supposed to be starting off with 4 flags, and then there was another flag introduced, and it was 5 for the first referendum. And this whole process, I think, hasn't endeared people to an outcome that people want to vote for. And what I find really interesting is, picking up what Alex said, the surveys are showing that the considerable majority of younger people support our current flag. Now, some of that, I suspect, is because they don't like this new design, this new drawing, and it's not gelling with them. But I think also there's an important part around our history that our young people are picking up on very strongly and recognizing that sustainability of our current flag in the world today.
So Alex is nodding his head, but Lewis piped up. Lewis, what did you want to say quickly, and then we'll get to you, Alex?
Oh,
Looks
look,
like we've
it's
just
quite obvious when you look at the numbers. Sorry. It's quite obvious when you look at the numbers that the reason why you've got a block of younger people who support the current flag, like Alex, who are voting to keep it, has got nothing to do with actually supporting the current flag. It's because of 2 things. One is they didn't like the process that was followed in the options. The other is because this debate's become highly partisan. It's become almost a referendum on the Prime Minister, John Key, because he was the one who put it forward. I mean, the irony of that is that this debate has actually been around for over 30 years. So the first Prime Minister, or actually leader of the Labour Party, was a guy called Norman Kirk. And he actually said, look, it's time for us to change our flag as early as the 60s when the Canadians were talking about doing it. So the idea that I think there's this big block of younger people who don't support changing the flag because they quite like the older flag, I think is a bit fanciful.
Well, I think you've got to be careful.
I want to bring Alex in here because I promise. Alex, I actually want to play you a video. Now, this is from Lewis's campaign. This is the Campaign for Change, and this is what your fellow New Zealanders, some of them, are saying. So take a look at some of their answers.
I'm voting for change.
Come on, let's have a new flag.
It's about showing the world who Kiwis really are.
I want a flag that doesn't have someone else's flag on it.
Why on earth do we have the Union Jack, the flag of another nation, on our flag?
It looks like an Australian flag, it looks like an English flag, and it's not us.
We can't go on like this.
I don't want my 3 grandchildren to grow up under a colonial symbol.
Let's all have the courage to let go of the past and look to the future.
I want something that belongs to us.
So Alex, is this about more than the flag? Is this about national identity and who New Zealanders are?
Totally. And I completely agree with all the points of view that those people in that video had, and with Lewis, that we do need a new flag and that this current flag doesn't represent our identity. But I think a lot of people have an issue, especially my age, with the process, with what the flag that's been picked as an alternative looks like. And I think there's also a sense that since we're younger, we have an opportunity to change it in 10, 15, 20 years. But if we change it right now to this alternative, we won't have that opportunity. We can't just pick up a flag and change it in 20 years. But if we don't change it now, we'll have an opportunity further down the track to change it. So I don't overly feel like I have a link to this current flag. I'd love change, but not with this alternative.
You know, Lewis, I think I love the optimism of youth that you're going to have another chance in 10 to 15 years. But, you know, I don't know if that's really going to be the option that's going to be in front of us. You know, it's taken so long to get to this point. As has already been mentioned, that 30, 40 years, many decades have already been getting to this point. And I want to just make a point about the process as well. Yeah, it might be challenged, and that's fair enough that it can be challenged. But remember, this has never been done before. Nowhere else in the world have the people been given an option to have a say on their flag. Usually it's something that's imposed upon us. Now, I'm actually really proud of the fact that as a country, we're trying something that other people haven't done before. And the reality is it's not the first time we've done this. We were the first to give women the vote. We celebrate our democratic right. So you don't, if you haven't got a template that you're working for, yeah, sure, you're going to might come across something that does, you know, in the end think, oh yeah, we could have done it a better way, or there might have been another option. But the reality is, you know, it's a pioneering effort to try and get the responsibility of the symbol that is most representative of our nationhood getting into the hands of the people and the minds and hearts of the people to choose. And if anything else, even if the current flag wins, you know, one of the things I'm really passionate about is my identity as a New Zealander. And I actually think that this will be something that will be a catalyst for people maybe having a better association with their identity. Because when I asked a lot of people, young and old, tell me what the Union Jack represents. Tell me what makes up the Union Jack. Why? You know, you talk about a corporate symbol, but the Southern Cross isn't actually asymmetrical like that. It's quite different actually up in the sky. So we always, and traditionally have always, you know, brought symbols into, adapted them to fit into things like a flag, and this is no different. Yep. So I just think, you know, yeah, it might have been a bit, the process might have been, yeah, it could have been done in a better way, but really, wow, can't you get excited by the fact that we tried and we've done this for the first time in the world? It's another first.
Hannah, we have people who disagree on how excited they should be about the proposal altogether, about how significant it is. So we have people like Tom over here who's saying the final referendum finishes in a week, a new flag, maybe new currency after that, and whispers of a new national anthem. This means that we have no identity. That guy fires back saying identity comes from songs and flags and pictures on money. That sounds plain dumb to me. But then he fires back again and says, if this is how you feel, then lobby your government to have no flag and no national anthem. David, I want to throw this to you. Is this really all, you know, how symbolic is this? And if it is just symbolic, how important are symbols? You know, can you be sympathetic at all to people who just don't care one way or the other, saying this is not what makes national identity?
Well, it's interesting when you go back to the research and the surveys that were done before the whole program started up. The issue of the flag for New Zealand was not one that was anywhere near the top of the agenda. In fact, I think from memory, less than 7% of people, when prompted, saw it as an issue. I think there's a couple of things out of this that are important to note. One is that through this flag referendum, we have actually started to see a lot more New Zealanders flying the New Zealand flag. As I drive around the country and I visit RSAs from the top to the bottom of the country, I'm seeing more New Zealand flags. It's very pleasing to see, of course, that the majority of those are our current flag, which is great. But for me, I think it started to let people know. I mean, there was a change back in New Zealand schools some years ago, following the American tradition of raising the flag and singing the national anthem at the start of each day, and that was taken away. I think that's a shame. I think when you look at the pride that the Americans have in their flag, it comes right the way through from the start. And I think now, when our flag is raised, we can actually see lots more people actually getting behind that very strongly. And our flag is something that, across the spectrum of everything that we have done, it represents all those achievements together. When you look at the picture of the first 747 landing in Auckland Airport, what was on the side of it? Our flag. And we've won 3 World Cups under this flag.
David, that's a nonsense argument. They don't put it on the tail. If they put the New Zealand flag on the tail of an Air New Zealand aircraft, it would be confused for a BA aircraft, and we don't want that. We don't want to be confused
but
with
the difference, Lewis, is that when the plane landed in Auckland, the flag that was shown was our New Zealand flag.
As the fern. They legally have to
You're
put
talking
the New
about
Zealand
corporate
flag
logos here, Lewis, and you can put a corporate logo on a tail of a plane, absolutely, and that's appropriate.
So Lewis and David are not going to agree here. Hannah,
on the tail of the New Zealand
Lewis, I hear you. Hannah, you look like you wanted to pipe up. Go ahead.
I know it's a feature of mine. Look, well, Lewis is talking about, this thing that represents all of our history. Well, it actually doesn't represent all of our history. There were flags that preceded this flag. And I think that's actually an important point to make. This flag is something that I actually part of our history. It's an important part of the story of the New Zealand nation, but it is not the only part of that story. There are flags that preceded it. There are other flags. My tribe has a tribal flag that I am quite strongly affiliated to. And I think as a country evolves, it is right that you start thinking about, right, now things have changed. In Auckland, we are the most culturally diverse, ethnically diverse city in the world. I think, we have to think about where are we now? We're a very new country. It isn't an indictment on our character as a nation, but taking the leap to say, right, we're at a point now that we need to think about what best reflects who we are now and where we've come from. And I think it's wrong to say that the current flag encapsulates everything that we were and everything that we are. I think we need to have the strength as a nation to go through and to mature through those teenage years and actually get to a point where we can say, well, actually, our country is different now. We've evolved to this point, and we need to think really carefully
Hannah,
about
in terms of
what
moving
are the
forward,
best symbols now.
We do have people who are basically, they have different predictions about where we're heading. So we have Gareth Morgan, who is a controversial figure in the country for other reasons, but he has a video comment about what's going to happen. Let's listen to it.
Now, what's happened is that the Prime Minister in particular has backed just using a corporate logo, and that has really upset the progressives who really want the flag to represent the new New Zealand, represent our treaty with the Indigenous people, where New Zealand's going, all that sort of stuff. So those groups have fallen out. So what's going to happen in this referendum is that progressive group will take sides with the regressives who don't want change, and they will simply outnumber the Prime Minister's group, which includes his own party, plus those who want a corporate logo.
Alex, do you agree with that prediction that the progressives and the conservatives are going to basically unite against the new flag?
I think for some people, I do think it was wrong for the Prime Minister to chirp in and say which flag he supported, because coincidentally, the flag that he supported from the beginning was the flag that got chosen, and I'm sure that wasn't a reason why it was chosen by the flag consideration panel, but I think it is a bad look. Just to go back to what we were saying previously about it being such an important part, it's an important part of our evolving national identity, this flag, and we have had flags before. In 1834, we had the flag of the United Tribes of New Zealand, but I don't think that I don't think that just because we've had this flag for quite a long time, it doesn't mean we have to stay with the same flag. It doesn't really incorporate any of our Māori identity or heritage. And it's like saying when we used to use the pound, or we used to use the British pound back, or the pound back in the 50s and the 60s, it's like saying, oh no, don't change to the dollar because it harks to our past and it's our identity. But look at us now, we're
Alex?
50, 60 years down the track, and now we have a dollar, and no one
Alex,
ever
I'm going
thinks
to
that
pause you there because that's all the time we have in the main show. I want to get your predictions in the post show, what you all think is going to happen after the referendum. Where are we going to go from here? I want to thank our guests, Lewis, Hannah, Alex, and David. We're taking them to the online post show for their answers, streamed at aljazeera.com. Welcome back. This is the Stream's online post show. We're going to get right back to our discussion about New Zealand's flag referendum. I had to pause Alex because we were running out of time in the main show. I could feel his passion about this subject. It was palpable all the way from Christchurch to here in Washington, D.C., but I had to pause him. So Alex, pick up on your thought.
Yeah, I just don't think that because we believe we've held on to something for so long, it doesn't mean we can't change it. I think you can say that about so many things in history. And like a flag can evolve, a national identity evolves. And I think it is time for the flag to change. And I won't overly have an issue if the flag does change, but my issue with changing the flag isn't about the fact I don't want it to change.
You won't overly have an
Alex,
issue. Would you fly it? What does that mean? You won't overly have an issue.
Well, I personally, on an aesthetic level, don't love it. But I'm not going to go out and protest in the streets if it's chosen. I think as a country, I hate to say, we're not an overly patriotic country. We're not like America where we go out waving the flag. We've never been like that. Growing up in New Zealand, we didn't really, clutch the flag much. Sometimes you might paint it on your cheek at a rugby match or something, but usually that was the silver fern.
Hannah was nodding there, but David, it's behind you. David, what do you say to what Alex just said?
Yeah, well, I think there's a danger that if we just accept that we should throw away a 100-year-old flag because there's change coming, then we're going to be in a constant state of that. And because there's no formal confirmed driver for this change, with no event that we can actually pin ourselves to and say, we changed our flag because... Every 3, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever, people can come forward and say, hey, time to change our flag again because we've got another mix of people.
Why did the Canadians change the flag?
Very simple. They had an issue. They had an issue to deal with, and we know that. Let's not talk about the Canadians because that's an irrelevant argument. They forced change because they had to. They were flying 2 different flags. That's the difference.
We're chucking it away and standing on it. We're just relegating it to the past and saying, yay, we had that flag, that's great, but we're moving forward now.
Well, you talk about
and
that
therein lies the rub, because that can happen again next month and next year and the year after. And that's our danger.
Come on, let's be sensible.
Well, it won't do because it's too expensive, and we know that, and we know the process has been controversial, to say the least. So that will be the barrier to it happening. But technically, there's nothing stopping it happening. Now, we need to know as a nation that our history builds moment by moment. We're building it right now.
But does this even represent our history?
All right, I am going to come in and applause, exactly. I love all of the points. I'm hearing them. I don't know if our audience is hearing them all. So I want to get our audience in and see what they think of this. Omar?
Hannah was talking a little bit earlier about the process, and we actually got a lot of interesting comments. People who are putting the blame on one specific person. So we have Nathan over here who says, I voted for the current flag. The flag panel failed miserably in giving alternatives by choosing the Prime Minister's choice. And then we also have a video comment here by Oscar. Take a listen to what he has to say.
I was originally pretty open to the idea of changing the flag, but I've found all the alternative options pretty disappointing, so I now hope that we vote to keep the original. I wouldn't say that I consider the whole project a sort of legacy project from John Key, but I do think that he influenced the public with his own favoured design, and I do also believe the media ran with that to a large extent, and that happens to be the alternative design we're voting for now, which I think is a bit disappointing.
So, Lewis, do you think the Prime Minister played a role in making the flag change possibly more difficult?
I do, yeah. And look, we were pretty clear a number of times saying that the Prime Minister should stay out. But unfortunately, he has driven this himself. He's taken a personal stake in it. And we have a situation where the debate's now seen as highly partisan. So there's not much we can really do about that apart from, carry on in our campaign.
David raised a point, and I hear you, Hannah, and I'll get to you actually with this point, because David raised this a little bit earlier, and he mentioned the word cost. That's something that people online, of course, have been talking about. People are always concerned about cost.
Yes.
I want you to take a look at my laptop here for a couple of comparisons here. Flag referendum, where the 26 million goes, and that is about 18 million US dollars. A lot of it, 10.33 in New Zealand. First postal referendum, that's just the mailings. Public consultation process was 6.73 million. A second postal referendum, 7 million. So these are initial costs. There's another tab here. Yeah. This is an exclusive from News Hub. Government doesn't know the full cost of the new flag. And I'll scroll down here for it to be changed on driver's license, military ensigns, police and fire service ensigns. So, Hannah, do you want to take this on?
Look, I think in terms of if it was a new flag, yes, there are going to be some ongoing costs. But, you know, for people go on about the 26 million, that's a lot of money. I can understand why people are concerned about that. But we've got a population of 5 million, and this is the most important symbol of our identity, that we literally fly around the world and to ourselves. So I think, you know, when you look at the costs like that, the majority of the costs comes from voting. We fought, you know, we talk about our returned servicemen. I think they fought for our rights to actually be able to have a say. And one of the things that costs is having a say. So as soon as you go to a referendum, as soon as you go to a voting process, it's going to be a lot of money. But I think that's actually one of the things that's that again, we tried it. It hadn't been done before. People might say maybe the decision just should have been made and left it to the government to decide. Well, I'm sure that wouldn't have gone down with that much excitement either. Right. So we went through a process that gave people a voice, and I think that's where the cost is. It costs to give people a voice. Yeah. But I had 3 grandparents who fought in the Second World War, or who served in the Second World War, and I think they actually would be proud to know that they were fighting for the rights to give us a voice.
Alex, I know you wanted to add to that, but let me just squeeze in a couple of tweets here from our community so you can respond to them as well while you're doing this. We have DLMT over here who says the government just announced, I'm not sure if it's actually the government, but the figure is floating around in papers, that changing the flag on the passports would cost $458 million alone, while Jasmine over here says money could be spent on children, families, social inequality, education, healthcare, and cleaning up our lakes and rivers. Do you think that's the sort of argument that could be brought up about just about anything the government could be doing, that maybe the money is better spent on other things, or is there a good point being made here?
I think that's the issue that people have. I think to have a good process, if we're going to have this debate, I do think 26 million is fine. I think that's totally reasonable, because you need a transparent, you need a fair process, and you need to pay for that. But I think the issue here, first off, I've got to say as well that I'm really happy about the amount of debate this has brought up, because I think this is great that we're talking about our national identity. I agree. But I also think that the issue that a lot of people are having with this is not the actual cost of the referendum itself. It's the fact that we've decided to spend money on a referendum rather than tackling things like our pretty shocking issue of child poverty at the moment. And we've got things like, we had a debate a couple of weeks ago about a drug used for treating people with melanoma called Keytruda, and our drug funding agency isn't funding that, yet we're spending $26 million on a flag referendum. So I think the issue here isn't the fact that the referendum, where the money's gone in the referendum, because I think you need that for a fair process, but it's the issue that we've decided to do this at all.
But wouldn't you always have, there are always issues.
For that change.
4 people talking at once. All right, so we're going to go around our virtual room here because we are running out of time, but I want to get your closing thoughts. I hear that you have them all. This is a 3-week voting period. It ends Thursday, March 24th. I want to know what you think is going to happen and if this debate will die on the 25th. Lewis, I'll start with you.
No, look, I'm reasonably confident that we'll get over the line, but even if we don't, my prediction is that the flag will actually still change. It's a question of when and how that actually happens. It's not a question of if now. And I think what's happened with this debate is that we've actually opened up a lot of questions about New Zealand's identity into the 21st century as a multicultural country in the South Pacific. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see, even if we don't get over the line, a lot of discussion and a lot of different designs out there flying from people's own flagpoles.
Hannah?
I think I agree. I think that in time we are going to get to a point where that we will make a decision to change the flag. I think we will follow suit every other country bar 6 in the Commonwealth, and I think we're going to get to that point. And I think it'll be a time that we are confident as a country about those points that are made. That is who we are, where we are in the world, and what are the things that really represent us in terms of who we are as a nation and as a people. So I think it will come a time, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, but I think, unfortunately, I do think it has been a very partisan debate. I think that the politicisation of this campaign has been something that hasn't really instilled a lot of confidence in me about the way that we debate as a country. And I agree with Alex. I think that one of the positive things is hopefully that we will take that to a next level and that we will up the ability to debate from an informed view and use our emotions in a positive way to achieve some kind of unification as a country in terms of that nationhood, but do it from an informed view.
So, Alex, your closing thoughts, picking up on what Hannah said, do you think that the debate will continue?
I think the debate will continue, and I completely agree with Hannah. And I do believe, I don't think that
Alex.
we will get in. Oh, thank you. I don't think that obviously we don't know yet. I think it's very close. I don't believe that we will have a new flag. I think that the new flag, we'll keep with the current one, but I do believe this has ignited debates and that this will keep on going, and that despite it, if it doesn't change, not changing now, we will have a new flag in future and we will do this again sometime.
And David, last but not least.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very, very hopeful, and I believe that on Thursday the preliminary result will be that we will retain the current flag, provided that the vast majority of New Zealanders who think that way actually get out and have their say. And that's been our message right from the start of this whole thing, that we want people to have their say. And clearly we can't rely on somebody else to make their vote to keep the current flag. And our feedback from people that are talking to us is that the vast majority of New Zealanders want to retain the current flag, but it's important that they have their say in that. I think probably what will happen after the result, irrespective of which way it goes, is there will be quite a digging over and deep review of the process that actually happened, because I think a lot of people have got uptight about that. And that's something that will last for a relatively short period of time. But then I hope we'll be able to look forward and to take up those opportunities to fly our current flag as part of our national identity and increasing that. And I welcome the fact that more people are flying the current flag as part of it, and I hope that that will continue as we move forward.
Remains to be seen, and I know our community will keep us up to date on what happens and how they're feeling about it on March 25th. Thanks to all of our guests, Lewis Holden, Hannah O'Regan, Alex Baird, and David Mosier. I want to get the last word from our community, Omar. I know that they are still talking.
For sure, and I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts, different reservations that people have about the referendum coming up. We have that Genuine says, your debate misses the point. Kiwis want to keep the old flag as the process was tainted and excluded beloved choices and was gamed by the Prime Minister John Key. While Emma says, I want the flag changed to represent our diverse culture better, but the cost is not worth it right now when other areas suffer.
Hashtags are NZFlag, and of course you can use the hashtag AJStream to follow along today's conversation and to let us know what you think of today's conversation. I'll be watching. See you online.